Hey guys, so where we last left off, in part 4, the Vol'jians were in the dark times and where they were able to make new branches of military power in the unknown regions, as well as their golden age of technology. Now that golden age will eventually reach them to the peak of their power after the years after the fall of the Galactic Empire. So let's begin with the story. The rebellion won the Battle of Endor, as we all know from the lore. And as the Empire quickly fell apart between Imperial Moffs and Admirals into eventually becoming the era of warlords and tyrants, the new Republic would be formed out of this war as the new branch of a new governing body and the reborn Jedi Order. As we already know, the new Republic has sent out messages to the Vol'jians telling them to be making an alliance against the Imperials, but of course the Vol'jians refused to get involved in galactic affairs. Suladan was with his own exploration fleets also decided to look for new planets and new systems to find. He was with his own personal escort fleet, which he would be able to look and explore upon new worlds in the unknown regions. What he would find would also be very shocking, as the new fleet was approaching towards one of the worlds that was seen to be very abandoned and forgotten, almost like if this world was never heard from ever again. And this world was very interesting. And as we all know, this world was Zakul, the world where the immortal Sith Emperor Vitiate once ruled. The Vol'jians, though, don't know this to be the case. As they finally found this world, they sent scientists and all kinds of places, all kinds of scientists, whatever you want to call it. They would, study this world, its technology, find the data records, whatever they can find from Zakul. And this was a great idea for Suladan's part, as he was able to gather the smartest and greatest of minds of the Vol'jian society into studying this world, as it should have been studied before. As the scientists suggest that this technology is old, and yet it can still be recovered and be transformed into their own, Suladan also expanded upon the military as usual, and trying to make the Vol'jian Empire a dominant force within the unknown regions by keeping the Chiss in bay, as well as other species. While that was going on, a young Vol'jian was discovered with the Force, and this was the first time that a Vol'jian has actually been discovered by using the Force. He was found by a Jedi Knight who would take this young boy and train him in the ways of the Jedi. This young Jedi his name is Julius Kor. He was sent by Luke to look for new Jedi to look for as soon as he can train them to Yavin. And he found the young Vol'jian and decided to take him in as one of his own, as a Jedi apprentice. And his name was Zaitan Zar-Ru, which he was a very honorable and disciplined student back during the time he was part of the Jedi. He was a master of various lightsaber forms, training, and he was very honor-bound, but also very dangerous compared to some of his other peers, as Vol'jians usually are. He was quick friends with a Jedi named Carter Gal, who would later fall to the dark side, spoilers, and would become close friends with him for most of their time in the Jedi Academy under the new Jedi Order and Yavin. Sadly, though, over time, however, Zaitan Zura would be very disillusional with the new Jedi Order and their codes, and felt like he wasn't. Vol'jians are regarded as warlike people, and he does not fit well, sadly, with the new Jedi Order's codes. And he made two friends. That was it, because Vol'jians were not very trustworthy, unlike most other species. His only true friends was Carter Gal and Jaina Solo. Those were his only two friends that he ever made in the new Jedi Order. That was it. Nothing else. and he basically left to go back to his home system, where he found a transport ship and decided to go back to the Vol'jian space in the unknown regions, where he would be able to go, which you can see on the map here. And he would keep having visions, which is basically so cool, but he keeps having these visions, and it kept driving him nuts. And when he got to the Vol'jian space, he was arrested by security of the Vol'jian security guards, who would get on this transport ship and ask him questions. And Zaitan basically told the security guards, including their captain, that he kept on having visions of this world, where he keeps having visions and they can't leave him. It was almost like if he was connected to something, this world with towers and blue plain world with another planet. And the security guards knew this, and they were surprised. So they decided to send this young Jedi to another transport ship, to where they could take him to the Supreme Overlord, Suladan himself. And so they got on the ship as usual, and they decided to take him to the Supreme Overlord, where this young Jedi would have to explain to him about this visions that the young Jedi kept on having. And once Zaitan and Suladan finally met, they had this long conversation, which was pretty interesting. And Zaitan kept on telling Suladan that he saw this knight with golden armor. It was like a person with golden armor, and he felt that this knight convinced him to this world, or send him to this world, almost like a forced communication. He kept on having visions about it, and he doesn't know why. So Suladan then decided to tell Zaitan to him that they both can come down to the planet together with the scientists and soldiers and whatnot, and see what they can do in order to what to do with this current thing. So these visions, when they got down to the planet, basically, these visions and things hit back at Zaitan, and he fell to the ground, basically, and he basically had these visions, and it changed him. And when these visions were done, it changed him as usual. He began to change his looks, and he decided to look like the Zakulian Knight, as we all know. And he forever decided to tell Suladan that we need to find Force-sensitive Vol'jians, those that have the Force. And so he did. And he would discover most of these Vol'jians to have Force-sensitive powers. And he decided to bring them to the Vol'jian military, which Suladan was surprised and actually accepted them into the military, which was the first time that the Vol'jians ever decided to use Force sensitives in their army. And of course, Zaitan became the High Lord of this Knights of Zutar, which is basically just to honor the war god in their name, and decided to continue the role of using these knights in the wars for future generations to come, and against either the Chiss or the Imperials, wherever they could. And of course, the Knights basically decided to use Zakul as their base of operations. No surprise there. And it will continue to do so for those years. So now we're going to cut to this idea that finally the Imperial Revenant, this group of Imperial Revenant was led by a Sith cult. And they attacked the Vol'jian Empire, and this constant war between the Imperial Revenant and the Vol'jians began. As well, as we all know, from war, both sides would suffer losses, casualties, you get the point. And this was led by a Sith cult, no surprise. And these Sith cultists were led by Zaitan's oldest friend, Carter Gal, who fell to the dark side. And this was very shocking to Zaitan, and he thought that his old friend hasn't seen his old friend for those many days or year or two, and he fell to the dark side. And during their battles with the Imperial Revenant, Zaitan personally killed many of the Sith. Sorry, he killed many of the Sith cultists, and killed his old friend Carter himself. Even though it wasn't an easy battle, the Vol'jians managed to win the battle against the Imperial Revenant, and Suladan and the others managed to achieve victory against the Imperial Revenant. And like after like the battle, basically speaking, sadly Suladan was assassinated in 20 ABY. Which was orchestrated by the Imperial Revenant to get rid of Suladan. As they know, Suladan was one of the greatest military minds and commanders of this time, and he was like in his 90s, so to speak. And the Vol'jian Empire would be constantly be attacked by both the Chiss and the Imperial Revenant, and this would be happening in many, many other years later, when finally the intergalactic species that the Chiss keep referring to, known as the Outsiders, was the Yuuzhan Vong. And they would invade the galaxy in 25 to 29 ABY. And this would be a story for the next video, actually, which we will get into in the next video. And so basically this is the end of like part 5, and I'll see what we can do there. I hope that you guys enjoy the video. This is part 5. In the next video, we will be getting to the Yuuzhan Vong War in part 6. So I hope you guys enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys in the next time on Sunday when we finally get to see the Yuuzhan Vong invading the galaxy. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.